I would say as soon as possible.
Well, I would say
It's a study
that
stuff.
before we talk about how much, who's gonna pay what, we gotta figure out what needs to be paid.
Right.
I think
Right, 'cause
the first step is to get a description of the process, exactly what has to be done. And I think it'd be very helpful for the members of the council over the next few months to maybe arrange a tour. I think if everybody saw the pond as Dan has seen it and I've seen it, you'd have a better understanding of the environment. It's not that difficult, it's 2 minutes away, and it's very interesting. But I think the first thing is to figure out exactly what needs to be done, and then we can talk about who's gonna do it and how we're gonna pay for it. But until we know exactly, and one of the things that obviously is gonna be done is there has to be samples taken. So the biggest potential expense is if this dredging comes up with contaminated soil that just can't be brought to the next landfill and has to be brought somewhere far away or has to be treated or something like that. That could be cost prohibitive, actually. We're fortunate, apparently we have the ability to get the dredging done for free, but that just getting the dredging equipment into the pond itself can be a very expensive process. One of the things we talked about during our tour was where this equipment would come in from, and there's no easy answer. So there's a lot of aspects for it, and the ball primarily is in your court. However, I think that and I'd be happy to reach out to the mayors in Gloucester and Englewood. I know the person I think about right away in Gloucester is Sophie, because she was a mayor for 8 years and she was always into environmental. And if she can't give us a sense of what went down, she'll point us in the right direction. Englewood, I don't know, I doubt that Mayor Huddle has been very involved in this. I'm sure we could probably get from Flat Rock some of the people at Borough Hall that were involved, and maybe they have a CFO or somebody that could give us a sense of what went down in that town.
Question.
Please.
How big are the how big were the ponds in Englewood and Gloucester comparatively to the fund?
They were both smaller. I think
Half the size?
about half.
But today, isn't Fister's Pond a source of water? I know a number of the streams that we see going down the hill to the north, they go into the Tenafly. To the south, they really end up in the Hackensack River. Overpeck, which leads into the Hackensack. So isn't today, I mean, you talked about the pond was originally created maybe as a source of water for farms that no longer exist. Well, those streams now, I mean, one of the reasons the Hackensack Riverkeeper is interested in the pond, and he was there that day, was it's a source of water.
And even if probably even before then, I'm sure there was water that was feeding.
There's
the brooks did just.
There's springs up there somewhere.
Yeah.
More part of that watershed.
I think the man-made part of it was damming it so that you get some water up there.
Yeah.
I think anybody that's familiar with the Nature Center will appreciate how important the pond is to the Nature Center, whether it's originally natural or not. It really creates a type of environment that's unique for the Nature Center.
We also do pond ecology classes, so that would be the end of pond ecology classes once the pond is gone. That would, you were asking, and I also think that there's an emotional connection by majority of people to open water. So that's another. So you have three issues. You have the biodiversity, you have the educational, and you have the emotional component.
So we will look at this
So they
meeting
can open their
today.
wallets too.
I'm sorry?
I'm hoping they can all open their wallets too.
Well, I'm sure they will. I think there's a lot of people out there that would be willing to contribute to this. I think this is I think, to be honest with you, after what happened with the previous situation, I think this is a ideal follow-up, the next step. I think because this is something everybody, I think, can support. The only question is, where do we get the money? So we'll look for you to come back at some point in time with a plan. And the engineers can help you with the estimate, the dollars and cents. It's got to be a comprehensive plan covering just about everything we need to do in order to get to your goals. And at the same time, I will reach out to Englewood and Gloucester, and I think that you should contact the clerk with some opportunities for the members of the governing body to take a tour of the pond.
Man,
Yeah.
the plan is not hard to get to, because a lot of the studies that we need have already been scoped out. I think they're more or less ready to go as part of a larger, comprehensive proposal, so it's not waiting months. It's-
Okay, well, this meeting was a good first step. Yeah, put us all on notice of your intent. Judging from the demeanor around the table, I think we're receptive to hearing what you want to do. More than that, we can't promise, because we don't know if we're talking about $250,000, we know we're talking about $2 million.
We're talking about 1 to 1.5 million.
Okay, and I truly think you'd be helping your own cause if you could come back and say, we have a sense that we could raise a significant part of that money, if that's the case. If that's the case, so at some point in time,
I guess the question is, would the borough be willing to partner in paying for those studies? Or is the borough expecting the studies?
How much
to
are
be-
the studies?
well, once again, you're
We'll know after
We-
the.
No, we can ask.
Oh, I mean, I have some estimates, but not from Mazer. Mazer's supposed to come back this week. They were hoping I was hoping to have it today, but it didn't get done. But I can give you some approximations as far as numbers, because we've met with the Passaic River Institute, and they gave us some things. Some things you will have to do for the permit, and the other things you would want to do because you'd be doing your due diligence. So, bathymetric survey and catchment basin mapping. So that basically tells us what the depth of the pond is, what the area of the pond is, and what the area of where, if a drop of water hits, it's going to go into the pond. And those are all things you'll need for permits. That's $6,000. Then sediment studies. There are two different sediment studies. There's a phosphorus study, and they basically take core samples, and so phosphorus is one of the nutrient indicators. So they check minimum. There's a minimum and maximum depending on how many cores. The more cores you take, the more accurate, but then again, more expensive. Because if you took only 3 cores and then you go to dredge and then you find something, you didn't, so it's one of those. So anywhere from 1,250 to 3,750. Sediment core study to check for metals and all those things is another 12 to 8,000. I'll give you the total. Then there's species survey. So one of the things you want to do is see what species are existing, answer some of the questions. What's here that's important, what migrates in that's important. Also determines when you want to dredge, because you have critical time periods for certain species and their mating and reproduction. That's anywhere from 13 to 21, depending on the scope. And then water chemistry
21,000
testing.
or 2,100.
No, 21,000, sorry. Yeah.
21,000.
13,000 to 21,000. And then water chemistry over a year, 6,000 to 11,000, depending on what test you do. So we have basically a project total, minimum 39, maximum 50,500.
Okay,
Pre-testing.
Right.
So I think at some point in time, you have to make a formal proposal to the mayor and council. Jewel, all of this would need to be put in our next year's budget, correct? It's not like we could find this money tomorrow.
No, this
if we
would be a
wanted to.
capital project.
So to just give you a time frame, we start discussing the budget at the end of the year. And by February or March, we should have a handle on whether we have to, it's not finding the money, it's finding
Right,
the
anytime.
desire, the willingness to do this. I would urge you to share in the cost of some of this. I think that would make more sense to get this project started off. If you're looking for $50,000 and you say, we'll come up with 25, we need 25 from you, I think that's gonna be much easier to receive than if you say we need 50. Nadia?
So what's your timing schedule? When would you like to do the tests and start the tests?
We would have liked to have already started the
Starting
tests.
tests, because I
Again,
know
it's,
you mentioned starting next year's budget, but you would like this year to start this year. Can you start in the winter with all of this? The fall and winter?
I think some of the studies, especially species surveys, I think you could probably do, as long as you're not frozen over, you could do bathymetric catchment could be done, and the cores could be done. I think it's the species survey would be the tough one.
So, Mazer's supposed to get a report of fees back to you by the end of this month, maybe?
Well, hopefully,
Maybe
I was
you
hoping
have
this
it in
week.
time for August, so we can discuss it again in August?
So that would be the fees for getting the permits. and what's, you know, what
And
study
the
they would
cost for
need,
doing
yeah.
the studies.
Exactly.
And Bob and I'll review it with Andy as well in our monthly meeting,
Okay.
because that'll come before that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
I'll move this back there.
Just qualify for open space.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good work. Much better.
Okay, next, to be considered. And we have our DPW director, who's also an arborist now, and our head tree guy. Bob Culbert is here with us to answer any particular questions. Some comments and questions were made, obviously I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did enjoy watching the TV show. Well, the Met game was over. So, there were some questions, and people wanted to have some information about the tree ordinance, which was in our packet, so you had an opportunity to look at it. So, anybody has any comments or questions?
Yes.
Bob, if you want to slide over?
Sure.
There are a few aspects of this ordinance that are very, very troubling. And Nadia brought it up, so I'm thinking that maybe she wants to talk about that now, and I'll bring them up.
All right. Are you ready?
Go ahead. I'm listening.
What I think several of us did not realize or know about the tree ordinance was that when plans come before the planning board for either a subdivision or whatever kind of project, that the planning board issues their approvals for the site, and none of the tree ordinance really applies to what it is the planning board has approved. Is that true? To some
Tree
extent?
ordinance doesn't apply, no.
So let's say we have a piece of property that's gonna be developed into numerous homes,
Mhm.
and there are a bunch of trees there. We don't have to, the applicant doesn't have to do a tree survey of the trees there.
He has to-
before the
he has to
planning
do
board
a
process.
a tree removal plan.
But that's after he has his permits to build whatever it is he's going to build.
No, that's prior to.
Okay, that's not what we understood it to be last week when we discussed it, so that's what I wanted some clarification on.
Yeah, no,
So-
prior to the.
Go ahead.
With the submittal of the plans to the zoning board.
No.
No.
I'm sorry, planning board.
Plans go to the building department.
So that's after the approval by
No.
the planning board though?
No.
So
Before,
it-
before an application goes to the planning board or the board of adjustment, it comes to the front desk here at the building
Yeah.
department.
Okay.
They determine
If there is-
which board it goes before,
Mhm.
and they also determine if a tree permit is required. If a tree permit is required, he goes out and does an inventory of the trees. Now, I don't know exactly, I don't want to mislead you as to, explain exactly what you do when you go out.
They provide the list of trees, I review the plan, and I go out and I verify what's on the plans, and then I come up with the tree removal / mitigation. I also try to envision, I go out to the field and envision what they're doing there and see if they can make any adjustments in order to save some trees so they don't have to take as many down, which sometimes they're able to and sometimes they're not. And then we issue the permit for,
And the
including
mitigation.
all the mitigation, collect their fees, and then we follow up post construction, make sure that they follow the mitigation plan, and then they get their.
All right.
No,
So
no,
let's-
hold on a second,
okay.
because I think the biggest misunderstanding, I'm listening to
Yeah.
the tape, and there's a lot of misinformation being said at the
Okay.
table, was if somebody wants to build a new house, or in more cases than that, make an addition to their home, and there's a tree in the footprint of where they want to build, that's looked upon differently than if they just want to take a tree down.
From
for the
100
sake of
feet
taking
from the
tree
house.
down.
From the mitigation point of view, is there a difference between the rules that a developer has to abide by if the tree is in the footprint of the house versus a regular John, like me or somebody else, who wants to remove a tree because it's whatever.
Too much
So,
shade,
There's
whatever.
there's
Well,
no
you-
difference between a developer and a homeowner.
Yeah.
It depends what you want to do.
Exactly.
I'm saying from the point of view of the location of the tree, if the tree is in the footprint of the new home versus a tree that is not in the footprint of the home.
What that'll determine whether or not it's mitigation, non-mitigation.
So the fact is that
But
A-
that doesn't matter if it's a homeowner,
Yeah,
a
doesn't
builder,
matter.
it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
no.
It's a
So the
property
fact
owner.
is that a developer can come and show a house with a footprint, whatever, that has 60 trees on it, and that developer or that builder or that homeowner will not have to do any mitigation, and he will be able to cut all those trees without having any other mitigations.
That's not true.
Okay.
As long as if the trees are within the footprint,
Yes.
they're allowed to be removed.
Okay.
Then there's other guidelines within the ordinance that allow for the
Okay,
removal.
because that's what we were talking. So what we were talking is there is a double standard between the actual responsibility of somebody that comes and builds a new house and raises 50 trees, and I myself, who has a house, and I want to remove a tree, and I have to mitigate for that tree, whether the bill, whatever comes,
There is no
because it's in the footprint, has no actually.
There is no double standard, Max. Different situations are treated differently.
Different standards.
It's not.
Different standards.
It's not different standards.
Yes,
You-
there are different standards.
No, it's not.
Okay, so
No, it's
somebody,
not.
so.
It doesn't matter whether you're a developer building a new house
The issue was not
or a homeowner like yourself that
The
wants to
issue was
build another
if it's in the
room.
footprint or outside the footprint. That's where the standards are different.
Well, but it's not a double standard. It's a
It's
different situation.
Different standards.
And you know there is such a thing as the rights of a property owner.
Which is the same, I'm a property owner as much as somebody that builds a house.
That's correct. You are.
So what I'm saying is, from the point of view of the town and the trees, if I'm building a home, I can cut all the trees without mitigation
No, that's
in
not
the
true.
footprint
Oh,
of the
in
house.
In the footprint.
And
Yeah.
that goes for you
And
if you're
yeah,
putting on an
If you're
addition.
putting
Exactly.
on a porch,
So the
Yeah,
question
same
in front of us was, why wouldn't we make sure that when we cut trees indifferent where the trees are, we do not mitigate for those trees that get cut?
what did you just say? I'm sorry, I don't
I didn't
understand.
follow that either.
You want us
Okay.
to mitigate for all the trees to get cut.
Exactly.
Making
It doesn't
projects.
matter where they are. If we're cutting trees,
I don't
why
know.
don't we mitigate for that?
I don't know the last time you cut a tree down on your property. But
It doesn't
having
matter.
sat here for a long enough time, people that want to add on to their house, regular people like you, not
Yeah.
big bad developers,
Yeah.
okay? They want to add a room onto their house. They complain to us that our tree ordinance is onerous. It's tough. In fact, what happened about 8 years ago was this body loosened up the ordinance because we had too many complaints from homeowners.
And that's
that
where
we-
I'm
that
fully
are-
aware of the fact
Okay.
that the homeowner trying to do something to their home is gonna basically have a problem. Well, somebody that builds a home and cuts 60 trees because it's in the footprint does not have to do a mitigation. That's where the conversation was last time.
In the footprint of the
Can I
house, of
just
the
continue?
structure, you don't have to mitigate.
Well, I mean, are you, rather than speak for Nadia, why don't you let her speak?
Well, he's not speaking for me,
Well,
he just
you-
added another
he
question, I just
introduced
think, yeah.
you. You know, it's nice to have somebody who's.
So if I'm going to page 16, and I had asked for this chart to be put in the ordinance, the chart that shows when you need mediation and all different situations. This issue came up last week,
What page are you on?
16 of the ordinance, the chart, the last page. This issue specifically came up last week with 53 Knickerbocker. The potential there for a subdivision, and there may be being some landmark trees. So let's just surmise that if the planning board allowed the applicant, granted the variance, whatever, granted them to allow to do what it is they want to do, Have you seen any tree surveys? Were they required in this specific example to provide you a tree survey already while they're at the planning board?
Yeah,
Okay, so-
I've seen the tree removal plan for the subdivision and for the roadway, the proposed
so-
roadway.
There was misunderstanding at the table whenever we met last week, 2 weeks ago, where it was discussed here where we thought that there was no tree survey.
Well,
That's how
hold-
this
hold on.
discussion
It-
was
it-
happening.
It's two different issues.
It's all semantics,
Mhm.
okay? We're talking survey, inventory,
Yeah,
Two different
and,
things.
you know, we need to straighten something out right away. The planning board doesn't set the rules.
Mhm.
The planning board follows the rules. The planning board follows the ordinance that the
Yes.
mayor and council provided them a long time ago. Okay, and it's not that the planning board has latitude to say, do whatever you want, or don't do whatever you want. The planning board doesn't set mitigation, you know. The tree people set the
I'm
mitigation.
sorry you weren't here when we had this conversation. It's just that
Yeah.
that's where we went awry trying to
And
understand.
as far, you know, the term significant trees has no significance. In the ordinance is a term called landmark trees.
Yeah.
We have a total of 3 of them in the town. None of them on 53 Knickerbocker. That's not to say that some of those trees on 53 Knickerbocker wouldn't be great landmark trees. But if you read the ordinance, you'll realize that in order for a tree to be declared a landmark tree, the property owner has to agree to it. So that
And we have to propose it. We have to basically do a survey, propose it to be a landmark tree, and then the property owner has to agree to it.
Well, I have a strong suspicion that in the case of 53 Knickerbocker, just like when the HPC wanted to declare
Okay,
it
what we can do is
historic,
find
they're
out
not
if
going
they
to.
are.
They're not going to.
What we can do is find out if there are trees that qualify as landmark trees, and then we can make a decision on what we want to do that. I saw the property, and there are many, many trees that are more than 100 years old. They have rare species, so I have asked the director of the DPW to go and do an inventory for the council, so we can see how many trees
Well,
qualify.
first of all, it's private property.
It's open for inspection.
By
The
whom?
moment they ask for the actual property to be subdivided.
Do you make up these rules? as you
No,
go
it was
along?
it was in the planning board. The
Yes.
engineer told you that you don't need any approval. Our engineer, that you can go and do the inspection. You were there. I was there.
I didn't hear that, though.
Well, you didn't want to hear, but you can
I
hear now.
didn't want to hear
Yes,
it.
because what happened is when we were trying,
No,
when
no.
when we were trying to send out, somebody said we would like to do an inspection. The lawyer representing the property said, I would like to be notified. Then our engineer said, well, did you read the application? We don't need to notify anybody in town. Once you make an application, can go and inspect the property. And so, well, for liability type reason, maybe I should be notified. So the idea is that you can go right now because the application is open and they sign.
Max, I have to stop you because we're on television and you can't go telling people that they can go on private property whenever they want.
Well,
That's not the case. That's not what was said at the planning board
The
meeting.
plan board is said that basically when you
No.
sign the application, you have an.
First the attorney and then you.
Max,
Yes.
but you're forgetting that the owner of the property has to consent to it being designated a landmark tree.
Well, that's a different story.
According to our ordinance.
That's a different story. I didn't even ask. I said we should find out if there are trees, and we should inventory those trees, and then we can ask if they can be. I didn't say that we can automatically designate them as landmark trees. I said we can have an inventory of
The
that.
owner would have to consent to that.
Absolutely, but we have to know if there are any, and then they can consent. If we don't know if there are any,
No, first they have to consent to it.
Put the cart
To
before the
consent,
horse.
no,
For us to go in to designate.
Let me read you the way it.
You why don't you read it?
Yes, absolutely, because I very carefully did, basically. All right.
Can I, while you're
You
looking
go
for it, can I
ahead.
ask
You
a
go ahead.
question?
It says if the owner or owners of the property on which a landmark tree is located consents thereto, the borough may identify such a tree as a landmark tree by the placement of a
Yeah,
suitable
but
marker.
look at the
It
process.
says
Look at the
contents
process.
thereto.
Mark, you had your hand up. Then Nadia, please.
No, I'll wait for this to play out. Thank you.
when you issue a tree permit, or tree removal permit,
Yes.
is it similar to what the building department does when they issue a permit? Is there a placard put in the window?
I'm in the process of designing.
Because I can't tell you that I walk about 3 to 5 miles a night, and in the small geographic area that I've walked through, I've seen some very large trees, and I mean, I don't know, a circumference of maybe 2 to 3 feet, maybe more than that, having been cut down, that appear to, the remaining stump appears to look healthy. There's no rot in there. I'm not a tree expert, but it would be comforting to know that that tree was taken down legally. So we're gonna have that. We're gonna have a placard.
Proposal, yes, we're designing a
I
placard.
appreciate it.
So let me go through the protection of landmark trees. A, upon the recommendation of the Director of Public Work, so we have to do it, that basically is about. The mayor and council shall determine whether any tree qualifies as a landmark tree. A tree may qualify as a landmark tree if it meets one of the more following criteria. Yeah? The tree is a species is rare. The tree is more than 100 years old. The tree is of abnormal height and so on. Now, all trees designated as landmark tree by the mayor and council shall be shown on the official borough map if the owner or owner of the property in which the landmark tree is located consent. So basically we have to find out the tree to basically public that, then they have to consent. It's not that they have to say, go and find it. A tree is a landmark tree by definition. If it's over
No, the
100 years.
definition is, it becomes a landmark tree upon the consent.
Yes, but if
until-
those are the,
until
and
there's-
the DPW has to go and check.
Until
if
there's
they are.
consent, it's not a landmark tree.
Absolutely.
It has, there's the
But
criteria for
the
it.
process is that we go and find out if they are, and if they are,
But you
basically
can
we.
only do that if the property owner allows you to do it. We don't have the authority to go on private property and take an inventory. That's common sense,
It
man.
says it right there. If the owner or owners of the property on which a landmark tree is located consents thereto, then the borough may identify it.
Yeah.
But they must consent. If
There's
they don't
a,
consent,
there's a
you can't-
reason why there's only 3 designated landmark trees in Tenafly. And that is because in those 3 cases, just like designated homes that are historic, there's so many homes in this town that could be designated. And the reason they aren't is because the property owner, for whatever reason, is not into it. He just does, for whatever reason, they don't want it. Okay, at the planning board meeting, what did go down was the fact that the chair of the environmental commission asked the applicant for permission to do or asked the applicant to do an inventory of the trees. They declined to do that, and there is no way that we can force them to do that. Really, end of discussion. It's unfortunate because there are a number of trees. I'm not an arborist, and neither are you, but I can tell you there's a half a dozen trees there that probably would qualify under any standards to be designated landmark trees. However, I think you could say without fear of contradiction that we're not going to get the consent of the property owner to do that at this particular time. It's unfortunate. That's reality.
You could still, just to make it clear, you can, really the permission is to actually go and put a marker on it, and that's what that part is for. But it doesn't get around you can designate something as a landmark tree, but it doesn't get around the main part of this ordinance that says trees that are located within the building footprint, within rights of
Yeah, it's a
ways,
different
and
story.
within the roadways can be removed, period. Doesn't matter what kind of tree they are.
Yeah, no,
It
that's
can be a landmark tree or
absolutely.
otherwise, it can be
Now,
removed.
what can happen at the planning board level, and Mark and others that have been on the planning board will, is in negotiations, when somebody needs a variance, you can often suggest to them that granting a variance would be more palatable to the board if they negotiated with us and maybe saved a couple of the trees that we want saved. Unfortunately, in this subdivision, there's no variances required. So our position to negotiate is beyond limited. It's basically non-existent. And those are state statutes, not statutes that we have created or could change.
So
Nadia and then Mark?
So while we have Bob here, in wrapping up this, and now that you're an arborist and you've had lots of experience, are there any changes that you think we need to make to this ordinance, or is it just perfect the way it is?
No,
It's good.
It's not perfect.
There's
I
no-
can
not
tell-
perfect?
You know that, Nadia. You've been here long enough. It's a continuing balancing act between the rights of the community to save trees and the rights of the property owners to do what they want on their property. And believe me, I 2 doors down from me, somebody was able, basically almost to clear cut better part of a half an acre, because they weren't contemplating construction.
That's correct.
And
The owners prior to the, they had the C of O prior to the adoption of the ordinance.
It's embarrassing.
So-
Did you say that they cut the trees before they had?
No, they had the CO. They got the CO years and years ago prior to this ordinance.
No, sir. I have one other question, something else I noticed. There's been a lot of sidewalk replacement, not by the borough, but people doing sidewalks that abut onto trees, and I've seen the roots just cut, severely back into the tree to do the construction for the sidewalk. You don't get involved in any of that, because the trees are actually in our right of way, and there's some that are along County Road where sidewalks were repaired, and the root is cut all the way back. It's our tree, and it's only a matter of time that tree is going to be tipping over. So is there maybe any notification? Do you need a permit to replace a sidewalk? A building?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Building
So
department could let us
maybe,
know.
okay,
They
so
can
they'll
replace.
let you know when a sidewalk's being
Yes,
replaced,
yes,
and you
speak
can
about
see
it.
if there's a tree there.
Yeah, I'll speak to Bob.
So it's that process that maybe as they're doing that construction, they can protect what our trees already in the right of way.
Walking around town is dangerous. You see a lot of things that need to be changed.
One more question for you.
Well, hang on, Mark had his hand
No,
up.
Nadia beat me to the punch again with the questions.
Okay.
One
Max,
more
I don't
please.
need to say anything tonight.
Are there any ordinances in any town that requires mitigation for the trees that are in the footprint of the new construction?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
In fact, amongst communities, we exchange information, ordinances, things of that nature on a regular basis.
Nobody's reinventing the wheel.
Right, exactly. And our ordinance is considered
A model.
The
a model and
tough.
extremely strict.
Yeah.
In fact, people don't generally want to go to the level
that we have.
that we have.
And we've been criticized quite often for being as strict as we are. But and Max, I share your frustration because
Did you see those trees? Yes?
yeah, I did.
Those are 7 feet wide,
Well,
500 years old.
now wait a second. The one thing I did notice about the meeting on Tuesday night is these trees were 100 years old, 250 years old, 300
They
years
got
old,
older and
400.
older.
Now I hear
Exponentially.
500.
I just read this morning because I wanted to
Unless
understand.
Christopher Columbus put his name on it, I don't know how we can say that.
I just read this morning, basically.
It really doesn't matter how
tree
old
that
they are.
is
They are
six-
gorgeous
A
trees.
tree is right at 6 feet wide. It's at least 400 years old.
Well, I don't know how old.
That was in the books.
I can't put a date on them, but they are really beautiful trees. They really are. Okay, we'll move on.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you,
You're
Bob.
welcome.
And I will tell you this, over the years, I've never finished a discussion on the tree ordinance and felt good about it, because it's just very, very frustrating. Bill, Bob, I don't know if you want the revised DPW building budget, did you want to stay for that?
Can you have that item? The budget itself is not really a major topic. We actually discussed this in detail at June 9th. And I believe you were given a copy previously of the revision that was authorized to create a line. And keep in mind, this is a summary, not the detailed budget. But there is now a line in, under unique items for UST closure process. As you know, we talked about reallocating funds. And the main reason I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that remind you that this had occurred, because we do have a resolution this evening, I believe it's item W, which is our initial authorization for doing the remediation and the professional services. So just in case there were any questions, this is how the funding for this activity was realized through the reallocation of the budget.
Okay, let's move on to the administrator's report, thanks.
So it's funny, over the,
No, it's in process. It's actually just starting. Remember, the testing was done, and now we're moving into the actual remediation.
Oh, okay.
now that the parameters have been established.
But then that's it.
Yes.
With that, okay.
HPC guidelines booklet?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
That is just a request by the HPC to pass along an increase in cost for the black and white edition of their historic guidelines.
Are they being overly modest? I mean, they wanna go from what, 10 to 15, is it?
I believe so, yeah, and they're gonna be
Would it make-
maintaining the color.
Would it make more sense to go to 20? Or is the color 25?
The color is 25.
Because, I mean, if 15 is enough, I don't see why anybody would object to it, but is it truly adequate for what they need it for?
Apparently so.
Okay. How many of these did they go through in a year, would you say? Rita, do you know?
We go through approximately, we went through about 10,
Oh.
and the proceeds go into our,
So we're not talking about a lot of money.
no, but the reason we kept the price at cost is because we view it as a public service too. But they do sell, we're down to one copy. And we're
Okay.
working on a
As long as
third printing.
the increase that you asked for covers everything, that's fine. Anybody have a problem with it? Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Under the administrator's memo, we've actually discussed the first topic. As you know, you received the copy of the ordinance from the clerk, and what we like to do is just try to provide a little additional information. In this case, we advised you of the properties to date that have had landmark trees established. And we actually had a request this week, or probably towards the end of last week, for Bob will be taking a visit to a home where the property owner has inquired about having a tree designated as a landmark tree. That's our pending request.
So we really only have 2 landmark trees now. It looks like
Currently,
number 1 was taken down.
later, after post designation. With regard to some recent updates, I just wanted to advise you about the fact that
I'm so
the,
sorry, how can that happen? Probably something happened, the landmark is not supposed to be taken down?
Well, there is a
mitigate for it.
there is a process for removing it, but it's not
A big mitigation, so there was a
new construction progress.
Okay, just wanted to advise you that the DCA has increased the bid thresholds. As you know, right now, the minimum bid threshold is 17.5, which applies to communities that do not have a QPA designated and registered with the Department of Community Affairs. If you have a QPA on staff or you have access to the designation, previously you didn't have to bid a service until it reached the cost of $36,000. That limit is now being increased to $40,000. Just wanted to make sure that you understand that where we are in this process is that Gene Vinci, our CFO, is also our QPA. And as you know, he'll be leaving as of July 30th for his retirement. It means we're going to enter into a period where we do not have a QPA, which means that any subsequent bids for us, the minimum threshold will be 17.5. I will be reaching out to some of my colleagues to find out if any communities currently have shared service arrangements, and we're looking at that as possible in interim. I just want to finish, we have 2 people within the finance department who have expressed an interest. Our new CFO said that she would take the courses for this designation. However, she already has another set of courses that she's in the process
Finishing
of
up.
completing, so we don't want to overwhelm her.
So this is a certification that is required for this.
Do you
Correct.
know how long that certification takes? Are we looking at a year or 6
I have to
months?
actually look at it. Typically, I think it might have taken about a year, but they've just made changes.
And the courses are very far.
Oh, then I'm close.
A lot of the courses are for almost any certification are in South Jersey.
Dan, did you have a question?
How many of our bids fall under 36-17? Like, when Gene leaves, how many? things will
You
change?
mean between 17.5 and 36?
Yeah, how many bids will
Well,
you
everything that's
expect
over
now?
17.5,
Yeah,
just about everything that's in the capital.
So.
I mean, you expect it for large projects,
Right.
but this will knock us
Right.
down a
Yeah,
peg.
just like getting the chairs
Yeah,
replaced, that's
There'll be
20.
a lot more paper, work to be done.
right, and that's one of the reasons that we want to look at not
A shared
a
service.
shared service.
That would
But
be
I have
great.
to figure out how that would work,
Because then we can buy it through, as part of someone else's purchase.
possibly.
Is that,
But if it's a unique project, we have to examine the extent to which that certified individual has to have access to our records and our information.
The person might have to just sign off on the specs.
Right. That's a possibility. So that's what I'm looking for first, how people currently do it.
is this,
Would you be able to
Is this-
get back to us by the
Oh,
next
yes,
meeting?
yes.
That
is
would
this
be-
a possible project through, Riverside Co-op?
Yes. I want to find out how first, and then
Right.
yes, Riverside Co-op is usually our first go-to
Right,
group.
right.
We're not meeting right now for the summer,
Mhm.
so we would come back together in September. But I could send out an email. I just want to find out
Right,
what
right,
are
right.
different methods
Okay.
that people use. ADA recreation playground compliance, we've been making wonderful progress, significant progress. What we are looking to do, we are preparing, as you know, we are completing the financing for Lower Griffin Park Playground, and we are proposing to complete the Roosevelt Common playgrounds by also applying for the upper level, which has the playground that is geared towards slightly older children for our upcoming grant. The deadline for the new grant is September 3rd, and we would have the public hearing and application submission approved at the August 10th meeting. And basically, we would just like to give you notification and information that that is what we were proposing. Because we want to complete an area.
Right.
So we figure rather than skipping over that and moving to a different location.
These parks will be finished before my grandsons graduate
Yes.
high school.
As he grows, he can go from Froggy Park to Griffin Park and then to higher level Griffin Park. Quick update on our code enforcement officer vacancy. As we advised you, we advertised, we received 17 responses. We feel at first look that 6 are viable candidates for interviews. We're doing it in 2 parts this week. Bob Burns and I will be interviewing 3 candidates on tomorrow afternoon and 3 candidates on Thursday afternoon. There's also a group of 4 that we're in the maybe. As you know, we're looking for 2 part-time candidates. I'm pretty confident, though, that we can find them within this group. The thing that we'll be looking at is, basically their availability. We were surprised, pleasantly surprised, that a couple of the candidates actually are working code enforcement officers. But we need to find out the true extent of their availability.
Right.
May I ask a question, Joel? Remember last year and this year, we said that it's so important that we have that tablet now be used. I asked you last time to see if we are using it or we just have it.
We hadn't started using it at that point,
Okay,
and
so
then we didn't pursue it.
all right, good. So
because,
now
yeah.
the point I was making, maybe when you interview those people, you can see who of them has the experience using it, so we can have an easy transition as
It's-
part of that to introduce it in the
It's
time.
in, it's in the interview questions.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That's
Because
important.
With or without tablets, even without tablets, there's still quite a bit of computer
Yes.
skills that are required. There's specialized software
Which
for
we
doing
have.
the reporting, which we have. So yes, we're interested in general in their ability to do computers, as well as their sense and commitment to public service, customer service. So we have a list of about 16 questions that we'll be asking each and every candidate. All right, and then our chamber is having another upcoming sidewalk sale.
Sidewalk sale is when?
July 25th through the 26th, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then you had, two special reports, both the police monthly report and the, building report, and as requested, all these things are now being delivered electronically.
You know, if we're going to do a sidewalk sale on July 25th and 26th, it reminds me of the end of the 5K where the fire department has the big hose out. Maybe we ought to have an area, a sprinkler area for kids to get wet, because if it's 85, 90 degrees,
Can I do it? I've got a sprinkler at home. I can-
well, I'm just saying, that might be a very interesting thing
I've
to.
got Where's Waldo, I've got Be Well Wellness, Dancing in the
There-
Park,
you know,
I can
there-
get sprinkler.
There was an article in one of the papers about a town doing Where's Waldo. I said, that was our idea, or your idea.
No, that was Where's Waldo's idea. He wanted to improve small business.
Okay.
I would be happy to put out a sprinkler.
Okay, next, under old business, Tony.
Okay, we're just, one, before we consent agenda.
Yeah.
On item number P, there's a refund there from the youth services camp. It's actually going to my family, so I'm gonna recuse myself and we
No.
vote on item number P.
Well, we're gonna vote it down anyway.
Well, that's fine. That's okay, as long as I'm officially
saw
recused.
Anything else on the consent agenda?
I have a question, Lizette, there's the plenary retail consumption licenses, the liquor license. There's one there for Zana D, which is now really botchy, so how is that handled?
The license still stays with the owner. So
Okay,
it's,
but is the owner actually Zana D, or is it do they transfer that to?
no,
the
it's not transferred, the trade name is different.
Okay,
And from what the owner told me, depending how well the business does, then it will be transferred later in the year, but it cannot be transferred until it's renewed.
so it's renewed, okay, so Zana's still holding it,
Yes.
thank you.
Tony, you wanna go talk about 9/11 since we.
Oh, there is an old business before, oh,
Yeah.
he's-
that's old business.
It's old business.
Oh,
So
okay.
liquor store.
Well, the only reason I.
We're having a ceremony on September 11th, which is a Friday evening. It will be at 7 o'clock at the Peace Plaza, located behind Borough Hall. The
Wait, Peace
ceremony will-
Plaza here? Not at the fire station?
Not at the,
Peace Plaza. The ceremony will pay tribute to the citizens of Tenafly who lost their lives, and pay tribute to the fire, police, and EMS personnel who went beyond the call of duty and continue that tradition every day. Send out invites to departments as well as the Board of Education.
okay, you might note on the invites that did not have the time.
Is that, yeah.
Yes, it does. It will commence at 7 p.m.
It's on the invitation.
Yes, sir.
It's in the letter.
I missed it. Okay.
Under old business, at the last meeting where you're not here, we had a presentation from a developer for 53 Knickerbockers. We asked him to come back.
And we didn't ask him to come back.
Yes, we did.
I watched the tape.
You
We
can watch
asked-
the tape.
We
We
asked
asked
for a
him to come back
proposal. We
for a
asked,
proposal. He's here with a proposal.
but that, he was told that we had to have the proposal prior to the meeting so that it could be reviewed.
I don't remember
I do.
when when we said that we said come back with a proposal. The actual to be having the proposal before the meeting was never mentioned.
Mark?
So, just to preempt that point, not to
Yeah.
argue that issue, I'm not sure if anybody agrees with me or not, but I have some real ethical issues with this whole presentation. You know, you indicated you have a conflict yourself, and that's not an ethical issue because you threw that right out there, so fair enough. But the area where I'm really troubled with is we had a member of one of our own commissions who just resigned, who was advocating for the expenditure of taxpayer money, at the same time as attempting to collect the real estate commission on it, so.
He's not
and-
here, so-
Okay, well, whether he's here or not doesn't matter, you can't undo what's been put in email and writing and what has been said. And I don't want my name associated whatsoever with this particular transaction. I just think there's questions that need to be answered ethically that are a problem.
The issue of having an ethical problem with somebody that has a commission is one thing. Having a presentation, you talk
Well,
to the-
first of all,
Yeah.
Well, that's my issue with
first
it.
of all, we'll decide right now whether or not we want to listen to a presentation tonight. So just, if there's no consensus to have a presentation, there won't be a presentation. So it's really up to the six of you as to whether you want to hear from this gentleman again. What I got from watching the TV show, and I watched it several times, is that he was told that if he, that there was no proposal, because they didn't have anything in writing, that he was asked to have something in writing prior to the meeting. That's the way I read it. I heard it several times, and so that we could review it and discuss it at the meeting. And if he wanted to discuss at the meeting, we had to have it prior to the meeting. We don't have anything. We're in the same position tonight that you were in 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that is somebody's going to get up and make a presentation, and I'm not exactly sure, what the point is, because we're not in any position to discuss it.
Okay. I have to concur with Councilman Zinner that I personally don't want my name associated with it. I think there are ethics questions that have to be addressed. Whether you accuse yourself or not, it's been brought to the table that he's a friend of yours.
I brought it up.
So I understand. But
There is no question about that.
So I really,
Matter.
I got some serious issues with that. So I don't want my name associated with the entire process.
Well, the question at this particular point in time is, do you want to have a discussion in the public meeting about this, with this particular gentleman?
No.
So I guess I would throw, just to be, I'm gonna throw a motion out there to table it until sometime in the future.
I mean, if he puts something in writing to the mayor and council, we can put it on a work session and discuss it, if the council cares to discuss it. The attorney can also review it prior to the meeting and let us know, the legalities, but at this particular point, we really have nothing to discuss. It's a matter of whether you want to hear from this guy or not. Nadia?
So, let me clarify this. As part of a subcommittee of the Open Space Committee, it was presented to some members of the HPC who were at an open space subcommittee meeting that, listen, if you want to save 53 Knickerbocker, go out and find the money. Find a way to do this, because the borough cannot afford it. So what they did is they asked people that they knew, would somebody be willing to fund this or go into a partnership with the borough? Unbeknownst to some of the HPC or anyone else, somebody from the Environmental Commission was acting as a realtor in this transaction. Who he represented, no one knows, because he does not represent Josh. He's not working for Josh, he's not working for the homeowner. So I'm not sure where the ethics is, because now this person resigned, and I don't know that this makes this an unethical transaction. He just put it out there, here's a deal that I've put together. Josh, to the best of my knowledge, did not accept that deal, nor has the homeowner apparently ever seen such a deal. So when we're talking about ethics, I want to be clear that no one here has acted in an unethical manner, and that the only intent in front of this board is, does this man's property, who did so much for this community, deserve 15 or 20 minutes of our time to hear a presentation, or we just are not interested and we have accepted the fate that 10 houses will go on this property? That's the only question.
No, that.
In my mind.
Well, first of all, I think you're misrepresenting your open space committee. You wanted to put together a committee, and you asked for this quite some time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to discuss how open space funds
Could be used.
How that metamorphosed into a discussion about 53 Knickerbocker and partnering with a developer. I frankly, I think it's well beyond the scope of the committee, but that's okay. All right. The only question right now that I think we need to spend any time on, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, is, do you want to give this gentleman the floor tonight to discuss whatever he has in mind? If the answer is no, that doesn't necessarily mean we close our mind to saving 53 Knickerbocker. However, there are at least two people that have already spoken that feel that tonight is not the proper forum to have a developer get up in front of us, whether he's a friend of Max's or not, and give us his proposal. His proposal, if that's what it is, should come in the form of a letter that we can digest with all of the other stuff in a book, that our attorney can tell us prior to the meeting it's something we should consider, or maybe we shouldn't consider it for whatever reason. That's the proper way of doing this. To have this thrown at us forget the ethical part of it. I don't think we need to waste any time debating that. It's a matter of whether you want to hear this guy. And the 6 of you, 7 of us, if there's a tie, need to decide whether or not you want to hear this guy tonight. It's as simple as that. Just because one councilman is advocating for somebody out of the blue to get up and talk and give us a proposal.
Excuse me, it was not out of the blue. It was here in the last meeting.
That was
It
out of the blue at the
discussed-
last meeting.
No, it was not. It was discussed with every single councilman over here.
Wait a second.
Yes?
That's what they call an illegal meeting.
Well, it's not an
You're not
illegal
supposed to be
meeting.
discussing matters before the board with
Matters before the board. The issue of having a presentation is not before the
please help
board.
me out here, Bill.
And there was fear, and
I don't
everybody.
think that's what he
agreed to
said. I
take a-
thought he meant that was discussed at the council meeting.
Council.
Obviously, you can't have discussions outside of the meeting with council people to decide something ahead of time. But I think he was talking about at the council meeting.
Absolutely.
No, he was said that it wasn't out of the blue because it was discussed prior to the meeting.
No, it was at the council meeting it was
Okay,
discussed.
well, that out of the blue. Nadia,
But-
please.
Peter, I just wanted to correct that this is not out of the scope to discuss proper use of open space funds. We obviously knew we couldn't afford to subsidize 53 Knickerbocker, we just don't have the funds. We've used some of the funds in the open space funds. So to look for other ways to preserve this, if the subcommittee thought it was important and to make a presentation to the council, if they agree, is certainly within the scope of that committee.
Well, the council agreed to hear it last night, last time. Now the question is, does the council want to hear it tonight?
Exactly.
Can I ask, did the subcommittee request that members of this governing body go out and try to find resources from friends or other people to make some sort of a presentation?
Yes,
They did.
yes,
So they
Yeah,
specifically
we-
said,
yes.
Yes.
oh,
So that's how it got to me.
Well, nobody
That's
asked
how-
me to find
Nobody
friends.
asked you. So that's how it got to me. Then I said I need to do a last effort ditch to save the property, and I basically
Well, you
went
got
to
to the
everybody. Thank you so much, Peter. That's very intelligent. And that's how I basically got to all my friends that I have and said, okay, can anybody come and partner with us to save this property? And that's how it all got together. It was not an underhanded, as they wanted to be presented here, approach to trying to get this one. So that's how I wanted to make sure. And you were here last time, and you have talked to him personally, and there was a conversation between you. Said, hey, do you want to save it? Yes. Then I'll come and have a proposal for that. If you want to save, it was directly between the two of you. He's here based on the conversation with you. He said, based on that, I'm going to go and have the presentation. So spend money to do that.
Mark?
Sorry.
Couple of things. So, Tony, to answer your question, yes, we put it right out there. I said it myself. If you can go out and find money and find a deal that makes sense, we'll entertain it. Perfectly reasonable, okay? I'm coming back with the issue of this particular deal based on subsequent events, and we made it very clear in black and white and on television, he had no assurances of anything, none whatsoever. And some of the issues that have been arisen out of this since that meeting, while Peter, I know you rejected that as not necessarily relevant, to me, it's very relevant and fatally flaws this deal.
You have a vote on this.
I have a motive?
A vote.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I have a
I'll
vote.
go around the table, and the 6 of you can decide if you want to hear this gentleman tonight. Donna, you want to hear him?
Now, unfortunately, Peter, I do agree with the fact that we have nothing in front of us.
Yeah.
And, well, I'm just saying that Josh could make this presentation and is fine and well, but we all know that the planning board is meeting very soon. And a decision of this magnitude takes this council months to review. So even if we hear this presentation tonight, Max, we will not, in all likelihood, it's impossible for us to be able to move forward on this because we can't get the financing, we can't get any of the work done in the amount of time before the homeowner moves forward.
Which is absolutely right. The idea is to show that there is an alternative and be able to work on it. The fact that we have something before the planning board approves, is different. As long as we discussed about the student college try, it is absolutely compulsory for us to try to say.
If Josh wants to speak to whatever he wants to speak during public comment, that would be absolutely be fine in my mind. But we have no authority, we have no papers in front of us, we have nothing that we could positively vote to move forward or authorize any kind of contact with the homeowner. We don't have anything in front of us.
Yeah, because he didn't know that.
I know, but
yeah,
the fact that
it
that
wasn't-
happened, our hands are tied. They're
So
tied, Max, they really are tied.
So is that a yes or a no?
That's a no, but may speak during, obviously, during
Anybody
public
may
comment.
speak during public comment. Max, you want him to, you're,
Yes.
I'm sure you do. Paul?
I also feel that we need to see something in front of us in writing, some types of bullet points, numbers,
Blueprints.
yeah, well, if not even blueprints, something,
A plan.
yeah, some
Dan?
sort of plan, so I think at this point it's premature.
No.
Tony?
No, I will say this, though, that I will, I was not aware that the council, that you guys had talked about that, and I'm glad that it was, so that makes it a little bit easier for me to understand. I don't have a problem with him making a presentation, but I think, no matter what he does or doesn't do, the homeowner can tell you to go scratch, and I'm not doing
Absolutely.
anything.
Absolutely.
So,
Right.
I'd hate to see the man waste all of his time and effort because nothing's gonna come from it.
Yeah, but
Just
based
gonna
on
make a
our
great
conversation,
So-
he did that.
I'm just saying.
Tony, is that a yes or no?
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. So, anyway, the council, there's no consensus to hear this gentleman tonight. So I'm going to ask if you could tell me in a nutshell, since he does have the right to get up in public comment, and technically 3 minutes, although I don't hold residents to 3 minutes, the question is, what do we allow him to talk about? I'm not going to entertain listening to a proposal. However, he can give us a sense of what his interest is and where he wants to go. But I think we need to leave him with the same message you left him with at the last meeting. That is, if he's serious about it, he can put something in writing, leave it or get it to the clerk. The clerk can distribute it so that we all have a chance to review it. And then if the council wants to go forward with it, we can have him come in and discuss it and take questions and give us answers. I think that makes the most sense. I'm not shutting my mind to him, but I don't believe that anybody should get up here, and be handpicked to make a presentation like this. I want to hear I want to see what he has to say. Bill, do you want to add anything?
He can get up during public comment time. I don't see the distinction between
Presentation
when
and public comment.
when it happens. So
All right,
if
so.
it's just concept, saying this is something I think would be good for the property, he could do that during public comment. And he could say, here, I have concept plans. I went through all the trouble. Some people can go through a lot of trouble to make a presentation during public comment. Other people just get up and ad lib. But you can't fault them for being prepared ahead of time.
And I will say this, it's not going to be a 20-minute or a half-hour discussion back and forth. We'll give him a few minutes to give us a sense of what he has in mind, and then he can prepare something for us. Nadia?
I have another piece of new business if we're done with
Sure.
that. I don't think that this governing body, again, should be, as we've done a half dozen times over the years, be in this position at the last minute that something that some of us think may be important to the community in terms of history, let this slip by us again. I really think that as a goal next year, whether I'm here or not, that this governing body owes the HBC and this community some type of joint meeting to look at properties that possibly could have a designation and formulate an action plan to designate properties.
Well, I think it's impossible to argue with that, but you made a comment last week about you want to encourage residents with properties before they put them on the market to come to us.
Mm-hmm.
May I point out that several months ago, I told you folks in a closed session, which we've had minutes on it already, that 29 Knickerbocker, the house right next door, which is over almost 3
Wait,
acres.
can I stop you? Just because we had minutes on it doesn't mean we've released them to the public yet.
Yeah, if they're released.
We haven't released them to the
Well,
public.
all right. So
So
there
we
was
can't talk about what
We
happened.
can't.
there was a property that was that the residents came to me and said, please find out if there's any interest in the borough. And when I brought it up here, there was absolutely no interest in even discussing it. And now it's public record that property is coming before the planning board for a subdivision.
I have to say something too. I'm fully disgusted by the fact that after we were asked to bring people that can basically participate with us in saving the property, I hear comments to the effect that there is a conflict of interest and that type of comments are in the paper regarding my name after I'm asked to bring people in to save the property. It's more than disgusting to hear that.
Well, you know.
Well, then you shouldn't have a conflict of interest and you
the
wouldn't.
ma- the
You ask for people to be brought in to
The
save the
manner
property.
in which you did it brought it upon yourself, okay? And it's a matter of opinion as to a suggestion that we put 118 units on a piece of property is within the definition of saving it.
It's, the issue was bring somebody in to help, and then basically say, well, you know, you brought somebody in as a friend. That's the whole issue.
I sit on the planning board and it's criticized for a lot of things, and if the planning board approved 118 units on that property, boy, would we hear it. A motion to close the work session.
So moved.
All in favor? See you inside. Good evening. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised or additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the Record Suburbanite and Northern Valley Press and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. Salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilor Barzalato?
Here.
Councilor Bash?
Here.
Councilor Lamastra?
Here.
Councilor Park?
Here.
Councilor Stefanowitz?
Here.
Councilor Messina?
Here.
Mayor Rustin?
Here. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following sets of minutes. June 30th, the work session, June 30th, the regular meeting, and June 30th, the closed session. A motion, please?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Revisions to the agenda?
None?
Good. And we do have a closed session tonight?
Yes.
Okay, public comment. Audience members wishing to speak have a 3-minute time limit to address the governing body. Large groups are urged to, or asked to have a spokesman represent them. Anybody care to speak? Please.
My name is Stanley Heller, 14 Marcotte Lane. I am a 47-year resident of Tenafly, and I have felt nothing but pride in my hometown during that entire time. Its government, its schools, its community spirit, its preservation of open spaces, and yes, the historic houses that were honored. But recent events are so unlike the Tenafly that I have known that I feel compelled to speak. I hate to say this, and to use a strong word, I feel ashamed of Tenafly's handling of the McKay Low Clyman estate. I address my remarks primarily to those who voted against landmark designation for 53 Knickerbocker Road, and I will try to change your thinking in 3 ways: by appealing to your conscience, by pointing out, I think, the fallacy in your thinking, and by also addressing your hoped-for legacy. I'm a physician, and I often see people embarked on a course of action which I know will end in disaster for their families and for them. I try to address their better angels, because if you don't listen to them now, you may have to listen to them later. Conscience is weak in a time of action, but can assert itself in surprising moments later. I do feel that if the worst does happen, it may affect how all of you experience the bequests of the McKay family to this town. I don't think you'll enjoy Sunnyside Park. I don't think you'll enjoy the Roosevelt Common. I don't think you'll be able to look yourselves in the eye when you compare Mr. McKay's treatment of Theodore Roosevelt with the memorial that you have made for him. Now, obviously, people who are on bodies like this have the welfare of their community in mind, and I'm sure you have concerns, probably over cost, that led you to overrule the unanimous and I think meticulously researched Historic Preservation Commission report, which is also strongly supported by the Planning Board. I would assume that you were worried that we had another Erev situation, a case involving a substantial legal cost to the borough in a losing effort. But that case was sui generis, a unique thing with no case law. There is well-established landmark preservation law. It is an established field. Many buildings have been saved, and the consent of the owner is not required. What is needed is a place of historical and architectural significance associated with major historical figures. If 53 Knickerbocker does not meet these requirements, then nothing does. Moreover, I believe that submitting to threats of litigation sets the worst possible example because it will invite other developers to use the same tactic against the borough. You might argue that it's too late to change, but preservation victories are often at the last minute, as with Carnegie Hall or even closer to home, LG. Even in Tenafly, there is a precedent for revoting, as in 2006 when Park Street was first designated an historic district and then undesignated. I think it's time to even the score. A change of one vote will make all the difference. Finally, as to your legacy, I know that the mayor and council will designate the new street name if the house is demolished. How would you feel if that street is called Rustin Worms Zinna Park Way? Will you feel pride that a street is named after you, or will you feel anger born of shame? When you drive by 10 McMansions, will you think, I saved the borough some money, or will you feel something irreplaceable was lost on my watch, and I could have saved it? But by changing your vote and changing your thinking, one day you may say to your grandchildren or even your great-grandchildren, I saved this majestic house, and also by then the even more ancient trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joshua Lobsker. I was here the last meetings, and you all agreed that you would like to save the trees and the house of, and by the way, I don't know who you are, but I have up here with me a proposal that you have requested and a preliminary drawings of how to save the trees, how to save the house, and also to have a place for seniors, and also to have an assistant living for the elderly with physiotherapy facility. All that can be done, and everybody should be happy. Even I believe that the owners will be happy with this proposal. Okay? I believe that they will like that very much. So, you guys ask for it and you got it. How do you like to have it?
Leave it with the clerk. She'll distribute it to us and we'll be able to look at it.
Okay, there is one for public, which is here, and I have another one for closed session. Would you like them both?
There is no closed session, sir. There is no closed session.
No closed session.
If you have something that you want the mayor and council to review,
Yes.
leave it with the clerk. We will look at it and.
Okay. I have the big boards with me, but I have also small ones here, so two
Leave
sets
it-
of
Whatever
them.
you care to leave with her,
Cool.
and we will distribute it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else care to speak? Please. It comes out, Kevin, I think.
Yeah, no, I've seen people struggle with it, thank you. I'm Kevin Tremble, 81 Westervelt Avenue, member of the Planning Board and liaison to the Preservation Commission. I'm not going to address any specifics about an application that's before us. I just wanted to have you remember some things that have happened historically about preservation in Tenafly. The first I wanted to pick up on was a comment in the press about something the mayor said about we would lose, about a designation litigation effort. And I think, first of all, what we've learned, and Mr. McClure was able to defend the borough in a litigation of Cotswold about a landmark designation and the validity of a certificate of appropriateness for actions that a property owner took. And that litigation was held by the Cotswold Condominium Association owner, master developer, I guess it's called. And in that litigation, that was against a prominent attorney locally, Elliot Erdang, the litigation tested whether the certificate of appropriateness was a valid exercise and thereby also the entire process of designation. Now this was upheld at the Superior Court level, was upheld at the Appellate Division, and denied certification by the not the United States Supreme Court. We didn't get there yet, at least not on this issue. New Jersey Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court of the state of New Jersey held that this was a valid process throughout, as long as it was properly done, and it was. And the procedures that have been instituted and in place by the Preservation Commission have been upheld, and they still continue in that same process. So I think I don't understand your comment, Mayor, based on if it's accurate in the press that we would lose. And I guess I'd like to see the case law that you cite for that decision. Besides that, I think I wanted to bring to your attention that the Preservation Commission, since its establishment in, I believe, 1988, has been a returner of revenue to the borough. I don't think there's a lot of other bodies in the borough that are volunteers and return as much revenue to the borough as the Preservation Commission has. And I think that's an important consideration when you think about the results of a designation and what can be done with it. And that includes, the railroad station was publicly owned before the Preservation Commission was established, but it was through researching grants and grant opportunities and high quality specifications that turned that place into it wasn't a very valuable asset for the borough. Today it is. It's, if my numbers are off slightly, I'll be only general in the numbers, but I believe the borough income from the railroad station is $82,000 annually. In addition, one of the recommendations of a former borough-owned property was 91 West Clinton Avenue. 91 West Clinton Avenue was sold at public auction with some stipulations that it be preserved. And the borough actually changed the zoning while it owned it to provide for an addition and business use. Now, that process at the time was approximately, the borough paid a little under $300,000 and sold it at auction for a little over $200,000. Now, the difference between that is really the public benefit of preserving it. Today, it's a $1.6 million rateable and $37,000 a year in income. Now, both those properties were recommended for protection and preservation and investment by the Preservation Commission. Bottom line, here is that over $100,000 annually comes in, and oh, by the way, how many school children come out of those buildings? Anybody know the answer?
About 50 every day. They're all preschool.
0 go towards the tax base, against the tax base rather, of the income. So the point is that I think there's a lot of creative issues that can be undertaken with a designation. And as one of the previous speakers said, it's not a requirement that the owner consent, and that has been tested throughout the country. And I think it's been validated all over. So it's really not an issue. So with that, I thank you for your consideration and time, and I hope you do the right thing. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that cares to speak?
Greetings, Jeffrey Miller, 187 Leroy Street in Tenafly. I'd like to know whether there actually was a formal vote by the mayor and council to declare the property historic.
Yes.
No formal vote.
So there was no up or down.
Well, there was a consensus, and I personally will mention that in my mayor's remarks if they hang around long enough.
It seems an odd thing not to have a straight up and down vote for
Well, if there's
such an important
if
thing.
there's no consensus to do something at this table, then we don't go forward with it. In other words, we just don't vote on everything. The first thing, it has to be a consensus to discuss and
So even
eventually
with
it's a voting.
the status of the home and the planning board's recommendation, the council and the mayor felt it was not worthy to take up and actually have a vote on? I just find that to be curious. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak?
Jim Coyle, 14 Kenwood Road. I've spoken before on the Open Space Trust Fund. I'm here to speak again. There's a specific proposal. I'm here to speak more regarding the general responsibilities and process of administering this tremendous resources that the voters of Tenafly gave, to Tenafly. But very briefly, what Dr. Heller said is that, very briefly, and he described it well himself, but there's an opportunity on the table to use the funds for open space preservation, historical preservation, and recreation, potentially, as opposed to what was done before, which was to undermine the primary voted usage of the fund. I've expressed a couple of opinions, and some of them I think may have been potentially sort of quickly dismissed, so I'm going to discuss them. And in the recent press, one of them is a publication from the EPA, and another one is from a group called EcoWatch. I'm going to discuss these briefly, but I'm first going to sort of preamble it. I'll give it, it'll give it to the clerk. I went to attend the most recent Open Space Trust Fund Committee meeting, okay? It was canceled, and we have an Open Space Trust Fund Committee because of perceived deficiencies in the first selection of $1 million for recreational purposes, okay? So the purpose of the Open Space Trust Fund Committee was to try and rectify those deficiencies. The deficiencies, there's a long list of them, and we could go on, but I watched on TV the last meeting, okay, and Mr. Zina, when you were chairing, you said, well, one point you made is if we want to spend this money, we have to have an open meeting, okay? What actually, you need to go to the common English interpretation of what the Open Space of what we voted on. That's what we will go by, okay? You need to have a public meeting if you're using it for one of the secondary purposes, but you don't need to have a special public meeting if you're using it for the primary purpose. The meeting that was had where the trust fund took a haircut of $1 million, or about a third, was an ordinary meeting, the last item at 11:30 at night, where the minutes or the agenda was published only 10 days before. And then we got into the issue of whether or not that we acquired, Tenafly acquired the property. Tenafly acquired, how did Tenafly acquire the property that Malcolm McKay gave us in 1916? So that's sort of a little bit of a stretch. But before I go on, I wanted to say at the beginning, you guys and gals all put in a lot of time. I want to personally thank you for putting in all of the time that you do, and for listening to us. But along with that, goes certain responsibilities. A real estate deal is not something that drops in your lap and then you can approve it, and it takes 8 months to discuss it and debate it while you put somebody on hold. What is required is the type of vision, to a certain degree, that the leaders of Tenafly had when they acquired the property up on the hill for the nature center and the avoided properties. Arguments that I've heard that this will hurt tax revenue, oh, I don't have a deal in front of me, go away, those types of arguments, that if we're going to say these, approach it in that way, why didn't we just give the whole open space trust fund back to the public? Because I believe you have to work. So there's a lot more detail that I could get into. But the two things I just wanted to respectfully point out, okay? For the general process, whether or not this deal goes through, and it sounds like it has a tremendous amount of positives, but a better job has to be done on the sticking to the original intent. I heard that at the prior Open Space Trust Fund meeting that an engineer was there. Engineer is not, I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey. An engineer is not there to identify properties. An engineer is there to build something. So I just get the impression that, I hope that this Open Space Trust Fund committee isn't a fast track to take another $1 million or whatever for a secondary purpose, totally neutering even more the Open Space Trust Fund from its primary objective. I will sum up, okay? In the press, very interestingly, Governor Cuomo in New York grabbed $500 million from the Clean Water Trust Fund for the Tappan Zee Bridge. Stuck by his guns for 1.5 or 2 years, okay? Once enough visibility arose, there was a lawsuit that is not the right application for this fund. Use it for the right application. It was eventually pulled back. On a different scale, I personally see a lot of parallels here. With respect to using the Open Space Trust Fund for artificial turf and lights, okay? Artificial turf is not, in the common sense, something artificial is not green, it's not open space. So $1 million was used in a certain, very plain sense to take away open space, because you took grass, you took money from the Open Space Trust Fund that was grass, you made it artificial turf, and there's practicality arguments, I understand that, but this was Open Space Trust Fund. It perhaps should have been used if the board, this mayor and council and the school board wanted to do it. I have a hard time understanding why open space trust funds that were argued to actually be an acquisition of open space were used. Now,
Jim, you gonna sum up?
the EPA here, okay, has an article. These are the artificial turf, and this was because this was not discussed earlier on. And thank you for the extra minute or so, whatever it happens to be. But I'm suggesting we should have allowed a little bit of time to discuss it up front as compared to what happened. Artificial turf is made from tire crumbs. Tire crumbs are made from lead, okay? I can't really read this right now because my eyes aren't that good and the lighting could be better, okay? But the present recommendation from the EPA is that anybody, particularly children, that plays on the field, before you eat anything or drink anything, you wash your hands, okay? It's an open issue as to whether or not that this is safe. It's not guaranteed to be safe or certified to be safe by the EPA. When I had 4 kids, some of them, many of you know my kids, and the first thing we did was we brought them to the ice cream truck, okay? So we really shouldn't be doing that anymore, which is another Tenafly position. And thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi, good evening. I'm Karen Blumenfeld. I'm the Executive Director over at Global Advisors on Smoke-Free Policy.
I'm sorry,
And
would you say that again slowly?
Global Advisors on Smoke-Free Policy based in Summit, New Jersey.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for your time. My coworker had come here previously during a work session to answer questions, and it's a delight to see many of you again. I recall being here back in 2013 when you did the Smoke-Free Parks policy, and we're so pleased to see that happened, and now over half the towns in New Jersey have that type of a policy in place. So thank you very much for being a leader on that. To the point tonight, which is your ordinance that you're considering a first reading on for increasing the age of tobacco and electronic smoking devices to 21, we applaud you for this move. As the information we provided to you previously, as well as our colleague James Irwin, who's a Bergen County resident and also here tonight, has shared, this type of a policy can really help to reduce access of tobacco products to youth and young adults. 90% of those who do start smoking do so before they turn 21. So communities that are doing this in New Jersey, 8 have done so far. There is another community this evening that is passing on second reading tonight, and there are several others that are in the works. And Massachusetts, of course, has done dozens of communities there as well. Just also the Senate, if you weren't aware of this, the Senate in New Jersey already passed a 21 bill, and we're waiting to see if the Assembly will go for that in lame duck session. But in the meantime, we know that in New Jersey, as elsewhere, tobacco control starts at the local grassroots level. Every single time, it's local communities and policy leaders that care about what's happening in their community and make a difference. And since the last time that my colleague was here, we have some good news to report with regards to support for these types of policies. A study was issued on July 6th by the Center for Disease Control, and they surveyed over 4,000 people, and 75% of those surveyed were in support of raising the age of sale to 21. That was a nationwide survey. Out of that, the 75%, 70% of those people who smoked that voted in favor of this type of a policy. And that completely aligns with the fact that 70% of all people who smoke want to quit. And they realize that they probably started when they were young, and whatever they can do to help make sure that others don't start when they're young is probably a very good idea, since smoking is the #1 cause of preventable disease and death. So we appreciate your interest in this, and we're here to provide you with any type of technical assistance that you need. And if you have any questions now or in the future, do not hesitate to contact us. I think you have our contact information. Thank you.
Any other further public comment? Please.
Gerald Ligo, 5 Stony Brook Road, Tenafly. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for your public service. I have a question. Has the borough tried to reach out to philanthropists such as the one that helped the JCC transitioned to acquire the property which facilitated the acquisition of East Hill Green Acres. Are you aware of this at all?
I did speak with one.
One.
Well, the only one that I knew.
Did you speak to the one in Ridgewood that helped the JCC?
I think so.
Okay. My next question, there are other organizations, similar organizations, that if you can buy time with them, have them acquire the land with a buyback option for a period of 5 years while the municipal borough acquires more revenue to complete the transaction. Simultaneously, you can apply for Green Acres funding, perhaps. So I'd like to ask the mayor and council, before going ahead with this, to call a recess on it for a period of 6 months so that efforts can be made to save that property by way of a third-party acquisition, only on the basis that the property would be retained in its natural state. The second thing is, and this is a general statement, it's fair to say that the developers that do work in Tenafly, many of them are not Tenafly residents, and yet they can impose their wishes on the people of Tenafly by taking down clear-cutting lots, because that's the way the ordinance is written, apparently. And I think that's grossly unfair to the people of Tenafly. They come in here, they develop, they clear-cut properties. We've seen it now. It's going on at Engle and Hudson Avenue right now. Recently there was a lot of clear-cutting going on at Park and Highwood. I think that's enough already. We've never seen this kind of clear-cutting in Tenafly of the magnitude that it is today. And I'd like the mayor and council to reconsider that ordinance and tighten it up and make it more difficult, or have them provide payment for according to the number of trees and the size of the trees, and put that in our Green Acres Fund. And it should be significant. I don't think we should treat this in a very casual manner anymore, because what Tenafly is mostly about, it's green. We pride yourself in calling it the Tree City. We're all proud of that as well, and we'd like to keep it that way. And I thank you, Mayor and Council.
Any other further public comment? And Jerry, by the way, I truly mean this. You give me any names that you think might be worth calling. I'd be happy to call them on behalf of the borough as the mayor.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is James Irwin. I live at 40 Jefferson Street, Hackensack, New Jersey. Just for the record, I do work for North Jersey Media Group, which publishes the paper that covers the town via the Suburbanite. I am here on my own accord. I want to thank the Mayor and Council for considering the ordinance to raise the age for tobacco and electronic cigarette products from 19 to 21. I'm sorry, let me backtrack. First of all, I want to take this moment to recognize a resident of Tenafly that passed away over the weekend, Mr. Joey Robinson Jr. For those that do not know, Joey Robinson Jr. was the eldest son of Sylvia Robinson and Joey Robinson Sr., who founded Sugar Hill Records. I don't know if the council and the mayor spoke about that, but I just want to take this opportunity, since I'm in the town where he resided in over the past several years, to acknowledge his passing and to say that he and his family did a great work for music and hip hop as we know it now. So I didn't want to come here and not mention that. Getting back to the smoking and the ban and the council entertaining the ordinance, I just want to thank you very much. You know, I go from town to town, as I stated before. This issue is very, very dear to me for various reasons, as I stated before. My father died of cancer pancreatic cancer when he was 33. I never had the chance to see him. We all know someone that's passed away of various types of cancer. But when it comes to smoking and the issues related to smoking, I read in the Huffington Post about 2 weeks ago, Europeans and folks in the Middle East, they have a much more higher smoking rate. And I read, this is what I read, and it just blew my mind, that half the residents of England that die from smoking related illnesses. I mean, that's just half of the people that die. I mean, that's just, it's just, I know people have a choice and people do what they want, but I just think that we as a people should want to live and want to live healthy and promote healthy lifestyles. I also want to say, Mayor Rustin, when you stopped me when I was here last month, I was taken aback. I understand that you had a time constraint and everything, but to say that you're gonna just bring it at the next meeting, that moved me. Like because I go to towns and I hear different reactions, and I just thought that was wonderful, and I just want to commend you for that. You think this much of the residents that you've been elected to serve, as well as the rest of the council, for taking up this measure. And I hope that it passes. I hope that it passes unanimously. I just left the town of Rutherford, which by all accounts seems going to pass on the second reading this evening. And as my team member, as I met Karen at the first town council that passed it, which is in Inglewood last year, and we've been connected at the hip ever since. And she's all the way down in Summit, and I'm up here in Bergen County, and as I always tell her, teamwork makes the dream work. So now I consider the town of Tenafly as a part of the team, and I'm sure that other towns in this region of Bergen County, the Bergenfields, the Dumonts, the New Milfords, and going all the way up north, will follow in your suit, as you are the leader in this movement in this part of the town, this part of Bergen County. So I thank you, and I thank the town.
Well. Anybody else care to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment section, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamastra?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefanowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Zina?
Yes, on all except for P, which I recuse myself.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to have a public hearing now on ordinance 1509. Lisette, please.
The following ordinance published herewith was first read by title only on June 30th, 2015, and posted on the bulletin board of the lobby of the Municipal Center. Ordinance number 15-09, an ordinance appropriating $46,000 available grant from Bergen County Open Space and $54,500 available in capital fund balance to provide for improvements to Griffin Park in the borough of Tenafly to be undertaken.
Dan, you want to read it?
I move to pass and adopt on second and final reading ordinance 15-09, that notice of same shall be published according to law.
A second?
Second.
Any public comment on this particular ordinance? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamastra?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefanowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Zina?
Yes.
Committee reports. I'll start to my left. Paul, you have anything?
The zoning board met last Monday, and everything went through normal. There were 2 matters carried forward. Both were settled fine. One was postponed, and there was 1 new case. The HPC had a meeting, a bit abbreviated. They were up against the fireworks, but the Class A member, Richard Bennett, actually presented his report that when they're done cleaning it up will be submitted to Jewel to help the input for the year-end report, and it's very professional looking. He did a very good job. And the HPC will also contact potential candidates qualified to do repairs, or even ask the state for recommendation if they know agencies that can help repair something like that.
Thank you. Max, you have anything?
No, there was no meeting.
Nadia?
Nope.
Tony? Mark?
Chamber of Commerce is having an art show in August with posters from the Rec East Camp, and they'll be in various buildings around town. And then also September 3rd, Wednesday night, the Chamber's going to have its networking party at a new restaurant yet to be determined. Excuse me?
Probably Canaris.
Probably Canaris. Okay. And that's it.
Dan, you have anything?
The Nature Center met, they presented today about the pond. The green team, the green team, I met with the chairperson, Carol Hodges. We did the site walk for the community garden with Bob. She's unfortunately not here, she fell ill. I think she'll be back for the next meeting to present her idea. And me and Bob Culvert walked the library garden site, and it's not feasible. It's on a very it's on a steeper slope, so it'd be very hard to do. That's it.
Okay, I just want to mention on the planning board met this past Wednesday night, 87 County Road was on the agenda, but it was adjourned at the request of the applicant, and that will be heard in August. Under new business.
Can we talk about old business? Or?
Old business, sure, Tony.
You know, over the past several months, and especially the past few meetings, discussions about Knickerbocker Road, about whether it should be deemed historic or not. If this body was to take up a formal vote, what is it? Do we think that it's even feasible that something could be done to deem it historic, or is it just speaking and talking just for the sake of talking?
Well, you know, this is something.
That's what I'm asking.
This is something that really should be discussed in a work session. You know, we did have this discussion twice,
but
I'm
bringing it up now just for.
Well, if you'd like, we can.
I would like to discuss it too.
One second, Max. Okay, if you want to discuss this as far as this designating it historic, we can put it on a work session agenda for the next meeting and discuss it at that particular time.
I think that would be good to have a consensus. I was moved by the speech that Mr. Heller had, and I think that would be good to have a consensus to see if we want to do that. I think it's right for the town to see.
So why don't we just put it on the agenda for the next work?
No, I think that we should take a consensus vote to see if we want to put it, because unless there is a consensus that we want to do that, we're going to be missing the whole thing.
Would you like to discuss it at the next work session, Dan?
Sure.
Tomorrow? Sure. Paul?
Yes.
Max?
Yes.
Nadia?
Yes.
Okay, so Nadia will, Lisette will put that on the next work session. Any further old business? Under new business, we have introduction of two ordinances. Paul, you want to read the first one?
On paper right now.
I'm sorry? Nadia, you have it?
Yep.
I got it.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I move to introduce and pass on the first reading ordinances 1510 and 1511 and set the hearing for August 10th, 2015 at 8:00 p.m. or as soon thereafter in the council chambers of the Tenafly Municipal Center.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Lisette, please.
Ordinance number 15-10, an ordinance to fix the salary, wage, or compensation of the employees of the Department of Public Works, represented by the Tenafly Public Works Supervisors Bargaining Unit for the calendar years 2014, 2015, and 2016. Ordinance number 15-11, an ordinance creating new section 3-17 in chapter 3 of the Borough Regulations, which shall be entitled Sales of Tobacco and Nicotine Delivery Products.
Thank you. Okay, under mayor's remarks, are you always? Pardon? Roll call for that? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Please?
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes on 1511, no on 1510.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes on 1511, no on 1510.
Councilmember Lamastra?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefanowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Zina?
Yes on 1510, no on 1511.
Okay, thank you. Under the mayor's remarks, I really wasn't going to talk about anything tonight, but actually, after listening to the public comment, I would like to discuss 3 items. First of all, the tree ordinance. I don't, did Mr. Nigro leave? I don't know if he was in the work session when we talked about the tree ordinance. I share a lot of his feelings, but unfortunately, putting things into legal perspective is another ballgame. First of all, we don't treat developers any differently than we treat homeowners. Developers who usually either own the property or work for the property owner have to follow the same rules and regulations that our property owners follow, including if somebody wants to expand their house, build a room on the side of their house, they follow the same rules concerning trees as a developer who's building a new house. And I am shocked and dismayed by the amount of trees that are coming down, just like just about everybody else who's lived in Tenafly a long time is. But our tree ordinance is one of the strongest in the country. It's used as a model by many other communities. And actually, a number of years ago, the mayor and council weakened the tree ordinance due to a plethora of complaints from homeowners that it was too onerous, that things they wanted to do around their house were either too expensive or they were not able to do it, and they felt the rights of property owners were being, restricted too much. And the council at that particular time actually softened the ordinance to a certain degree. Secondly, the Open Space Fund. The formal name of the Open Space Fund is Open Space, Recreation, and Historic Fund. There are 3 uses for that money, and to say that public hearings aren't always necessary, we've only used money from the Open Space Fund twice. Once when we acquired an acre on the top of the hill by the Nature Center, and once when we helped the Board of Education finance improvements to the Geisinger, to the football field. In both cases, we had public hearings, and I believe that any time we spend open space money, we should have a public hearing to get a sense of how the community feels about it. But keep in mind that there were 3 purposes when we initially crafted this fund: to acquire open space, to improve recreation, and to spend money for historical purposes. And the reason recreation was included in that was in order to establish the fund, we had to go out for a referendum. And we were concerned that the referendum might not pass unless we added recreation to it, so that certain people in town would support it. I understand the reluctance of some people to spend money on artificial turf and lights, and that's why when Councilwoman Lamastra and Councilman Zena suggested a committee to talk about how we should use this money, I thought it was well intended, and we're still waiting really for a final sense of where that committee thinks we should go on spending the money. And don't forget, in 2 more years, this fund ends, and if we want to continue it, we have to come out with another referendum. And I think the voters in Tenafly are entitled to a sense of how we think we should spend this money if we expect them to extend the open space, the fund, and I certainly hope that they do. Last but not least, to talk about 53 Knickerbocker, and I'm sorry that I was not here at the last meeting. I did listen and watch it on Channel 77 several times. And I just want to go over the history, which somehow got just all over the place. The Historic Preservation Commission did an excellent report, which they presented to the Planning Board and to the Mayor and Council, in which they explained why they felt that this property should be saved. And they made a very strong case for it. The Mayor and Council, upon receiving that report, asked the Planning Board for a recommendation. The Planning Board voted to designate the entire property, the home and the property, as historic. And that came to the Mayor and Council. And on June 24th, 2014, the Mayor and Council, first there was a motion to designate just the house. That didn't pass. okay? And I did not support that motion because I didn't think it made any sense to save the house and sell off all the property. Then there was a discussion to designate the entire property, including the home. That was the recommendation of the planning board, on which Councilman Zena and I both serve, and that there was no consensus to do that. And people that have said since then that they supported a designation for this property, not true. It just didn't happen. And then several months later, we considered bringing the topic up again, and was decided not to discuss it. So that's the actual history of where this designation stands. And yes, I was quoted in the newspapers as saying I didn't think legally we had a very strong case to designate it at this point, because we had that opportunity to do it previously and chose not to. And I didn't say that I wouldn't support that again. I would support it again if that's what the council wants to do. And I'm glad that members of the council have suggested that we open that discussion again. I listened to Mr. Lapsker, and I appreciate the time and effort that he's put into this, and he feels that his proposal, everybody would be happy, including the owners. Well, it has been suggested to him several times that he take this proposition to the owners, because it's very difficult for us to discuss something that's already before the planning board. But as a private individual and a developer with means, there's nothing preventing you from going and speaking to the owner, and frankly, I don't understand why the owner has not been contacted. And I think that would be the way to go. I question the term save the property, because when you say save the property, what exactly does save the property mean? Putting 118 units of housing up there, regardless of whether it's senior housing, assisted living, affordable housing, or just regular housing, that's not my definition of saving property. The property includes a great lawn and a lot of trees, and I just don't see how, this is something that we as a community need to figure. Is it worth saving the house and changing the character of the neighborhood by putting multifamily dwellings up there? I don't know. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'd like to see the property saved as is, and that would require somebody or some entity approaching the owner and saying, "We'll meet your asking price." And we have discussed informally how we could get that funding, and there's been some really, out there proposals that really probably can't be done. But, Mr. Nigro suggested there's benefactors out there. I let you know that I'm at your service. If you can give me the name of a benefactor that wants to make this kind of investment to save this property, I'd be happy to call them on behalf of the borough, and I think the mayor and council would jump at the opportunity to save this property. So we will discuss it again at our next work session, and maybe things will change. And we will also review your proposal. And
saving the trees in the house, not the property.
Okay. Once again, we all have to look at the total picture. It's more than a house. It's more than trees. In this report that the HPC, which is a long report, they sent this to the planning board and to the mayor and council. I went through it several times. The word tree is not mentioned in this report once. Great lawn is mentioned numerous times. You don't have to sell me on the trees, and you don't have to sell me on the great lawn or the house. This property should be saved in toto. And I hope that we can come up with a way to do that. But unfortunately, we are bound by due process, and the planning board is in the middle of hearing an application. And I'm not going to go any further than that, other than the fact that no variances are required. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
But if you give them this
you
will make it happen that they will destroy everything.
We have a closed session. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And feel free to contact any one of the 7 of us if you want to discuss things further.
I'll read it, yeah. Resolved in compliance with NJSA 10:4-12, Mayor Council of Borough of Tenafly. go into closed executive session, discuss a litigation matter that's protected by attorney-client privilege. That's just an update on the Lax versus Borough of Tenafly civil litigation. Minutes will be taken to this meeting and released to the public time. The matter is resolved. After the closed session, Mayor and Council will reconvene in the Richard D. Wilson Committee Room to adjourn this public meeting.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.